What do you think we need to do to change our attitudes towards people that are struggling with addiction and mental health?
First thing that comes to mind is sit down and have a conversation with them.
So what would we discover if we did
They would
that?
just they would discover the person's story.
Yeah.
They would discover the person inside that body. They would discover the person is a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, whatever, the same as we are.
Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple, a practical podcast that guides clinical leaders and healthcare managers to create trust and support with their teams. I'm your host, Trace Hobson. Join me for weekly interviews, practical tools, and inspiring transformational stories of bringing people together in healthcare. Now, let's dive in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Safe Space Made Simple. This podcast is designed for clinical leaders, managers, and executives who want to learn how to generate a safe space, especially in circumstances where that's difficult or it feels difficult. In today's healthcare system, we are navigating unprecedented complexity and complicated situations. One of those incredibly complex areas is for clinical people who are working with those that are struggling with mental health and substance use. Vancouver, British Columbia has some of the most challenging areas to deal with when it comes to substance use and mental health. Whether you're working on the downtown east side and in the tent cities that have set up, or if you're in some of the communities outside of Vancouver, like Surrey or Maple Ridge, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, these communities are all dealing with the very complex issue of human beings that have mental health issues as well as substance use issues that are living unhoused in the streets of their communities, which is why I'm so excited to have my guest today, Brian McGrath, who is a specialist in this area and has worked in the field for many years. He also teaches recovery coaching to clinical professionals who are trying to navigate this incredibly complicated issue. In today's conversation, Brian shares his perspectives on harm reduction, how to navigate this really challenging area, and what people that are working in this field can do to take care of themselves and to take care of the people that they're trying to serve. I think you're going to really enjoy today's interview. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Brian McGrath, my friend. So I'm so glad that you're here to talk to us today on the podcast. I want to welcome you here. And I think it would be cool for people to hear, first of all, what kind of work do you do in the world and why do you love it?
Right. Well, thanks for having me, Trace. It's going to be fun. I'm a recovery coach. I've been in the field for 15, 20 years now, something like that. I was and still am an addiction counselor, but I also do recovery coaching and I train recovery coaches across Canada. And one of the reasons I really love coaching in the recovery coaching part is because I don't dig into someone's past. I'm a counselor and I hate digging into people's past. That's not my strong suit. But what I am strong at is, so as in coaching, we say we're walking shoulder to shoulder with someone, looking the same way and moving that way. And that's what we do in recovery coaching. It's what's kind of blocking you? What's the barrier right now? And how can we get around it or through it or over it or whatever to keep you moving forward? Because in counseling, I know a lot of when took a lot of the training was, find out what's going on. Then we dig right in and it's all past stuff.
Right.
And yeah, I know in early recovery, I can't remember where I seen the statistic at, but they say it's probably better when someone's around 3 to 5 years sober, clean, whatever you want to call it, in recovery. So they have some coping skills before you start hitting some triggers. So it's trauma informed, kind of, is teach them coping skills, then start digging into stuff.
So Brian, when you look at the work you and I have known each other for a long time. We've probably known each other for 20 years, going on 20 years anyways. And I know that you've done a lot of work on the downtown east side. You've worked with people that are struggling with addiction and mental health for a long time. And the people that are listening are people that work in healthcare. Many of them probably do work with people that are struggling with mental health or substance use challenges. Share what you think recovery coaching has to offer to those folks that are working with people on the front lines and to those that they're working with.
As soon as you said that, the first thing that came to my mind is empowerment. We get to empower the people we're working with so they can get their self-efficacy, so they can move forward. It's not about what I think is right for them.
Right.
It's about what they believe is right for them and what they need. So in recovery coaching, we train people how to do that and how to empower the client so they feel good about themselves. Because once they feel good about themselves and once they feel listened to, then they start moving forward. Now, one of the things I do say, especially coming out of the downtown east side, is as a recovery coach, we got to remember we're in it for the long haul. It's not something that's going to be solved in a couple months or a year. I mean, there's one guy I've worked with for 5 years, but he's moved out of the downtown east side now. He's held a job for a year. Like it took a long time, but now he's moving in life. So, and that's one thing he always said. He said, you were always just there. And for me, it was just, in recovery myself. And I mean, that also is we are there for the long haul. Absolutely, we are. That's what it's about. It's about a relationship and about helping empower people so they can get the life that they want.
All right. So let's double click on the relationship part, because I think of you as somebody who people naturally gravitate towards. And when you talk about developing a relationship with people that are struggling with addiction, I think that that could be sometimes challenging. So I'm curious, what kind of ingredients do you think go into a relationship that you're developing with a potential client that helps them to feel safe and to feel like you're not going anywhere?
Well, one is do what you say, right? So if you say you're going to do something for someone, do it. Don't put it off, just do it. And if you're going to show up, show up. And when they show up, so, I mean, I'll go with working downtown east side. I would have guys that come into my office and we would sit and I would say, you can share what you want to share or not share, totally up to you. And some of them would say, I don't feel like sharing. I'd say, okay, that's okay. And they said, what do we do now? I said, that's up to you. And I said, you can carry on with the day or we can just sit here. And a lot of them would get up and leave. And, but they would come back like the following week, whatever, because I always had appointments for them, especially in the treatment center. So they always showed up. So I never pushed them or told them they had to do something. Here's what you got to do. It was an agreement. So if we're going to work together, so after I built a little bit of relationship with them, then I'd say, okay, once they start opening up a little bit, how do you want to work together? And the question was, what do you mean? You're just supposed to tell me what to do. And it was like, no, I'm not. So we're going to make an agreement. And I would say, in this office, you're allowed to swear if you want. I said, but you're not allowed to swear at me. I said, that's how I work. You get frustrated, swear all you want, but you're not allowed to swear at me. So if you swear at me, then the session's done. I said, so how would you like to work? I said, what are some boundaries of yours that you like or don't like? That so I know that I can respect what you want to do. So it's creating that, holding the space for someone, creating the safety, and again, it's empowering them, knowing they have a voice in how we're going to do this.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're sharing there. So what I hear and what you're talking about is you have agreements together. So that's part of what you're doing to create a safe space for them. You're holding the space, which is an interesting idea. I'd like to know what you mean by that. Like when you say holding the space, what is it that you're doing there to hold the space for that person?
One of the biggest ways to hold space is silence. So when I hold space, I don't got to solve the problem. I'm just holding the space. It's here. This is our space to work with. If you want some suggestions, you can ask me and I'll give you some. But I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm going to hold space. I will be quiet while you try and come up with ideas or suggestions or nothing. Or we just sit here and actually do nothing and just breathe together.
I love
What was
this.
it?
This reminds me of presence. Like this, for me, it's a fundamental practice of presence, listening, and questions, powerful questions. And I wonder about what you think about like how have you worked with people in this area for so long without burning out? And because I know a lot of people that work in this field, and one of the things that they struggle with is burnout, and also this feeling like there's just no way that they can make a change that's going to be impactful. People are dying that they're working with.
Mhm.
It seems like there's no hope or that there's no change. So I'm curious, like, how are you working with that element, and what do you do about that, and what do you do about things like burnout?
Burnout is it is, especially in this field. It's a difficult one in all the health field, the mental health and addiction, and I mean with COVID and all that stuff that was going on for years and still going on. I mean, a couple of things that I do for me is I exercise a lot, hiking, running, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Therapy, right? Go. I do counseling myself, do therapy. I got a coach I work with also, but it's also, and it took me a long time to get here to realize, like with the person I'm working with, it's not up to me to solve the problem. I can't solve the problem.
Yeah.
It's not my, it's not mine to carry. This one was just said to me this summer. I was at some training with First Nations, and the lady that was presenting talked about the residential schools and everything.
Mhm.
And I felt kind of uncomfortable because I was probably the only old white guy there, and I went to Catholic school with a lot of the First Nations back east and that. And so she asked me, she said, "You kind of look uncomfortable." I said, "Well, I am." I said, "Because what you're saying," I said, "I feel it inside." And she said, "No, this is not yours to carry." She said, "I'm not saying this for blame or anything." And she said, "This is not yours to carry."
Mm.
And that made so much sense as over the years working with the guys and women also. But it's not ours to carry. We're here to help and reach out a hand and have compassion.
Mm.
Like, I love the word compassion. Compassion to me is we really want someone to have the life they want. I really want someone to live the way they want, not the way I
Mm.
want, the way they want. But
So
that's
do
up to
you
them.
think, with what you just said, do you think that that's one of the mistakes that you notice that people that work in the field make, that they're carrying parts of this that aren't theirs, and so that's what's making them tired?
Absolutely. You can't, you cannot leave a job like this, especially when you think it's your job to fix them and then go home and be okay.
Mm.
Because now you're thinking, especially if you had a bad day and someone in this day and age right now, if someone dies and you think that's my fault,
Mhm.
right? I didn't work hard enough. I didn't do this for them. I didn't do that for them. And the truth is I tried to love someone. I tried to open, the road for them or however you want to say it. I tried to hold space for them. I try to be there for them, but it's still not up to me. I know that it's not up to me. I mean, I still
Yeah,
get
it's their
affected. Don't,
choice.
yeah. I mean, I get affected. Don't get me wrong, especially when the fentanyl first hit. There was, I think it was 6 guys that I was really close to that I was working with all died within
Mhm.
a matter of, I think, a month and a half. And because fentanyl hit and it was all going on downtown at that time. And yeah, so it did affect me because, again, I'm human. So the first thought is, I'm not doing my job well.
Mhm.
So then I just had to get some counseling and really talk about it. Like, no, that's not mine. I was there for them. And there's just some stuff that, there's some stuff people can't get through. There's still stuff
Mhm.
I'm working on because I can't get through it.
Right.
Right.
What so what you can't do alone, you can do together with other people as well. Like, I think one of the things that I think about a lot is that in order to have self-regulation, we need to have co-regulation. So we need a community of people that are working together, like, and especially with the work you're talking about doing, like, you can't do that alone. You need to have people that are on your side, that are supporting you. Um, it makes me also curious about what you think after working for years in the field about harm reduction. Is it working? is it reducing harm? Like, what do you think about harm reduction?
I believe it's necessary. I believe it's got a bad rap, but I also believe it's not done well. And what I mean by that is this may stroke or hit a couple people, but I mean, I'm in harm reduction right now. I'm managing a place around harm reduction. I've never worked that part of the field, so I really want to try it. And what I found out is like the government will pour tons of money into needles and pipes and all the stuff that they need to use, but they won't pour money into getting the proper training for the people or paying them well or having enough staff on to actually help people. They'll give them lots of pipes and stuff. So they'll let them, the term I heard this a while ago, they'll let them get high well, but they won't let them get well. So in order to get well, we need doctors to take wound care and everything else, because the people on the streets with the feet and all that there, they need maybe some trauma counseling. They need some coaching to get moving forward. They need a lot of support, and the support just isn't there. The government's not funding it well.
And this is the thing that I think about too, having some sort of interaction with folks that are working in this field without a lot of understanding of trauma and how that's happening concurrently with addiction. You know, as Gabor Mate talks about, trauma and addiction are always together. They're always hand in hand. And so to your point, we're spending lots of money as a community or as a society on, like you said, helping them get high well. But what about trauma? What about addressing those things and helping people in that way? And so what do you think we need to do with that? How might we do it differently from your perspective, do you think?
Well, I mean, if you go back, and Mate talks about this too, is with the methadone, that when it first came out, it was enough. They were supposed to go in to get enough methadone to level them out so they weren't bouncing around, and so they could level them out enough where they could actually sit down and maybe talk with a counselor or a doctor or something and try and see what they can do to move forward. And I believe that's what they got to do here. It's the same thing. Like, people do need to use at times to level out, especially, I mean, I'm so glad I don't use anymore. The drugs out there are they're crazy. Like, it's just unbelievable what's out there now. So the addiction, the trauma and everything else that comes with it, and they got to keep using. I mean, we both know that I had to keep using just so I didn't feel the pain. Right. And that's what they're trying to do, is get rid of the pain. But again, they don't have the coping skills to do it. And we're not helping them with the coping skills. We're just giving them a needle and a pipe and saying, here. So we need training, well-trained people. I mean, there's lots of training. Coaching is one of them. We do need counseling and trauma counseling for both the clients and the workers. Right? The workers get affected. I know a lot of the staff that I'm with, you know, I mentioned this at I'll say almost all the staff meetings. Because when I first went to work there, I ran out and done a couple of ODs with them, and, you know, doing the CPR and bring them back to life, and the naloxone and all that there. And then we'd walk back to our center, and people would just kind of carry on. And when I first started there, I said, would you guys like to sit down and talk or go for a walk around the block? Oh, no, it's okay. That's just part of the job. And it kind of took me back. And still affects me. And I'll say it's gone down lately, but I know last year in the organization I was in, I think it was 140 some ODs they done that year. Like, that affects someone. You go in and someone's blue, and then all of a sudden you bring them back to life. Like, and then you get out and dust yourself off and go back to work. Like, and the government doesn't. Yeah, it is the government. The government just pours money in without the proper resources for both the people working in the industry and the clients that need it.
I think it's definitely, the government has a lot of work to do there. I also wonder about the attitudes within our society as well. And It's not easy. One of the things you're bringing up is that social connection, relationship, care are what people that are struggling with addiction and substance use and mental health need. And oftentimes, the nature of the malady they're dealing with or the nature of the challenge sort of alienates them from society.
Mm.
And what I notice is there's a lot of incredible people that are doing work in this field that really love and care for and support these folks, these people that are dealing with this. And then there's also a really big group of people that have attitudes that are not conducive to people feeling safe, that are not conducive to people feeling cared for or supported. And that is a human part of this too. And I don't mean to bring that up to judge anybody, because I could be on that list at times, when I'm
Mhm.
walking down the street and I'm coming close to somebody who I might feel afraid of, or I might have, thoughts of judgment around. And I don't think we change this without changing our attitudes. And so I'm wondering, what do you think we need to do to change our attitudes towards people that are struggling with addiction and mental health?
First thing that comes to mind is sit down and have a conversation with them.
So what would we discover if we did that, Brian? Because you've done that. Maybe some people listening have not done that. So what would they discover if they did that?
They would discover the person's story.
Yeah.
They would discover the person inside that body, right? They would discover the person is a father, a son, a daughter, a brother, a sister, whatever, the same as we are. So if you would listen to the stories, and I mean, I listen to a lot of stories, and there's some pretty horrific stories out there what happened to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say, for myself, it's like I understand why some use because of the pain, and the only way to get rid of the pain is to use. Because again, society, and just like you say, I'm there at times too. It all depends on how spiritually fit I am when I go into work, where I can be real nice guy, or I can be an absolute jerk because I'm not having a good day. So
Mm-hmm.
you're right, Trace. We all do it, and there's different extents we do it to. But if people learn to, yeah, actually just maybe sit down and have a coffee. Say, hey, would you like coffee? We sit down and have a chat. I know years ago, long before I ever got into this field as a carpenter, I was doing high rises downtown. And it's when I first got into recovery. I might have been a year or two. And I drive down, and there's this one guy just underneath the SkyTrain on the boulevard there. And every day I would stop, and at first I just gave him a couple of bucks here and there. And he was an older guy. And then I started slowing down, and I'd make lunch the night before, and I'd make him a sandwich. And I'd give him a sandwich every day. Like as I pulled up, I gave him a sandwich, maybe a couple bucks too to go with it. And one day, and if I didn't get the light, I'd pull up on the boulevard so the cars could get by me until he could come to me, and I'd give it. And one day he showed up out of a magazine. He cut this gold heart out of it. And that's what he said to me. Hmm. He said, "You got a heart of gold, boy." He said, "And have a great day." And right there was just that couple sentences that made my day. It was
Mm.
like, man, this is something else, right? This
He
guy
called you
is,
boy too. That sounds like an
yeah,
East Coaster.
yeah. Geez, it could have been, eh?
He must have recognized one East Coaster to another there, Brian. Yeah, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was it.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, and again, it's compassion. It's just something to eat, and yeah, hope you get what you really need.
Yeah, loving people is not something. I think sometimes I fall into the trap of thinking that we got to get people somewhere. Like we got to get them to over there, like whatever over there is in
Is,
my
yeah.
definition of that. What you're telling me is no, actually we just got to love people and just be there with them without a whole bunch of attachment to expectations.
Yeah.
Um and I hear that recovery coaching can do that in some way. Coaching as a practice helps you to put the responsibility where it belongs. It's with that other person, puts the agency and efficacy with that person, not with you as a coach. So what what might somebody who's listening, who's working in healthcare right now, and within mental health and substance use, um, let's say that they don't have recovery coaching as a practice in their practice professionally. What what's the process for learning recovery coaching, and how might it support them in their practice of working with people that are struggling in this area?
So to learn about recovery coaching, I mean, there's a few trainers out there up in Canada, down the States. We have one of them, and just again signing up for something like that and learning about it. And there's lots of conferences around nowadays too that you can find out about coaching and what it's about. I mean, coaching. I'm a certified leadership coach also. So coaching is coaching. It's learning about people or learning about an organization. It's learning about them. That's all it is. And some people like to make it a little bit more complicated. And I mean, there's skills to go with it. Don't get me wrong. It's a skill. And that's the nice thing. It's a skill. So it can be learned. It's not something
Right.
you have or don't have. It's a
Right.
skill. So it can be learned. People, a lot of people say, oh, you have it or you don't. No, it's a
So
skill.
you're being so modest. You train recovery coaches all over the province of British Columbia and Alberta. So I'm just going to call that out because I know that you train coaches all the time. So when you're training people and they're coming to your certification for recovery coaching, what are sort of the top three or the first three skills that you're trying to teach them to have?
Well, one is motivational interviewing, right? But in the motivational interviewing, the top skill in there is reflective listening. And there's three different kinds of reflective listening: is repeating back to them exactly what they're saying, or putting it in your words and repeating it back. And one of the other great ones is reflecting a feeling back to someone, right? Because them three things is, again, you're starting to really listen to someone and you're reflecting back. So you're trying to understand exactly what they're telling you. Because most times, I'm guilty, someone will say something, it'll trigger something in my mind, and I'll start thinking about it and miss a bunch of stuff they just said.
Right.
And so I'm not learning about them. So when I just really concentrate on listening and reflecting back, so here's what I hear you saying. That sounds really frustrating. See, when we reflect a feeling back, I know in recovery, my feelings are all messed up. I didn't know, they were very confusing. So when we reflect something back, it's like a person really gets to think about it. Yeah, that was really frustrating. Or no, I was just really angry. So then we can get to there. And the best way to understand too is, I like Brene Brown. She says empathy. Because years ago, I know everybody said, oh, empathy is walking them on my shoes. Well, you can't, because it's our experience in our own shoes. But we can connect to a feeling. So if someone says, yeah, I'm pissed off, I know what that feels like.
Right.
Because the situation may not piss me off. It may piss you off, but doesn't. But when you say I'm pissed off, oh, I know what that feels like. So I can connect to the feeling. So when we reflect a feeling, then there's some connection there. And so that's one of them. The other one that I really enjoy is appreciative inquiry, finding out someone's strengths. And because everybody has strengths. And as an addict, with all the stigma and everything else, they've been beaten down a lot. They don't believe they have them.
Right.
And when you start asking, like, some of these people been on the streets for a long time, they got a lot of freaking strengths. They're still alive. They're still moving and grooving. I don't know if I could do that. Like, it's a lot to be on the street. It's a lot of work. It's a lot. Yeah. So they got a lot of strengths. So helping them find out what are them strengths, right? And how can you use them to move forward? So appreciative inquiry is a big one. And then I think there's so many different topics that we got a lot of topics. And I think the other one too is being trauma informed.
Right.
So we don't trigger ourselves and we don't trigger other people. Or if we are triggered, we have some coping skills to work with. or if someone else is triggered, maybe we have skills that we can help them with.
Yeah, I really like this. So reflective listening, but I really liked the reflective feeling. So
Yeah.
what you mean by that is what you said when you sort of modeled that in this conversation by saying, "Oh, that sounds really frustrating." Is that what you meant by reflective feelings?
Yeah.
Okay. And then appreciative inquiry. And then the last one was again,
Trauma informed, being so we don't trigger stuff.
okay. So what do you do or what are you watching for when you're working with a client and you want to be trauma informed? What kinds of things are you doing and saying, and what are you watching for?
Well, when we're working with the clients, the things we're watching for, if they're engaged, then all of a sudden they stop being engaged. Something just happened, right? Because now they're withdrawing.
Mm-hmm.
So something happened. There was a movement or a word or something that now they're putting up the wall. Like, no, you're not getting in now. There can be that there, or there can be someone now they're getting a little aggressive, right? In the session. So you can have two sides of the coin there, sitting back, not doing anything, aggression. The other one is sweating, right? Or confusion. They start getting confused around a bunch of stuff.
Right. Right.
One of the biggest ones that I notice is they want to answer the question the way they think you want it answered,
Mm-hmm.
because they think you hold power over them or something. So they want to get it right. So they can be your friend or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a tough one, because I know in treatment centers. So I'm going to pick on a treatment center, and I talk about this in our training all the time, because there's transactions and transformations.
Mm-hmm.
And so people come into a treatment center, and I worked in them, so I know if they go to class, if they do their chore, if they follow the rules, they'll get a roof over their head, they'll get food in their belly, and they'll have a warm place to sleep and stuff like that. That's a transaction. So they come in. If I do A, B, and C, I'm going to have a good place to sleep, especially in the wintertime when it's cold and wet outside in Vancouver. What we're looking for is a transformation that's on the inside. And that's what coaching is about, is what do you need to transform? Don't worry about all these other rules and things to get the transaction. What do you need to transform? What is it you need to change the inside so you're okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's I talk a lot about that in the coaching, is because that's what we're trying to do. We're looking for the transformation in people. We're not looking for the transactions.
Hey, just a quick pause to today's podcast. Are you having a challenge as a clinical leader with one or more individuals who you find activate you on your team? Or maybe you're noticing that oftentimes you want to be able to communicate with people, but in the heat of the moment, it's difficult for you because you're having a difficult time regulating yourself. Well, I totally understand this. This has been some of the biggest challenges in my life as a leader and as a human being. And so I created a free resource for clinical leaders, nurse educators, and healthcare executives called the Relationship Regulator. It's a mini course that will show you step by step a framework that may serve you very powerfully in this area. So if you want to download the Relationship Regulator for free, click in the show notes and you'll find that resource for you today. Now, back to the show. When you think about approaching your practice as a recovery coach and somebody who's a professional in the field working with within a harm reduction model, where do 12-step programs fit into your perspective as you're working with clients?
They don't.
Well, that's
In
an
all,
easy, so check that. Okay.
because what it is I don't think about 12 step, or I don't think about, going to church or going to a support group or going, well, I don't think about any of that. I just ask the client, like, what's it you would like to do?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And when they start talking, if they bring up 12 step, oh, do you know what 12 step is? Do you know the different styles of groups? Then I can help inform them so they can make an informed decision.
Right.
So I don't talk 12 step or anything when I'm coaching
Okay.
unless they ask.
But what if they don't even know to ask? Because my assumption, and maybe this is my ignorance, my bias, is that if somebody's addicted to drugs and they're living on the street and they've got a mental health issue, they may not have the capacity to ask the right questions. They may not have the information. So how do you not offer something or resources in that situation?
Well, again, you can, but there's ways to do that. So one way is, if you're talking, you say, so what is it you're looking for? And they bring up, may I like to get recovery? Okay, could you expand on that for me? What does recovery look like to you?
Okay.
And and then so you keep asking questions just so you understand where they're at. And
Sure.
I've done it before and said, and where they might have brought up, I'm thinking of this, or I think I'm going to church, and I'd say, well, I have some experience around it. I've been in recovery myself. Would you like to hear some of my experiences?
Hmm.
And so then they would say yes. I'd say, okay, well, I've gone to 12-step groups. I'm kind of an NA guy, I would say. And here's my experience. And here's what the 12 steps are about. Here's what kind of some meetings are about. And then at the end of it, I would say, does any of that connect with you?
Yeah. So what I
And
see,
if,
what I hear, what you're sharing is like you're constantly making it person centered and strengths based for that person to make the choice.
yeah.
And you might put some nuggets out there, some breadcrumbs, but it's for them to just choose themselves. And then from there, you're giving them information. So that's, yeah, that's cool. I like that. That's great.
Oh, it's funny you talk about 12 steps. I had a phone call on my way home from work yesterday. A guy called me from Toronto, and he wants to take the course. And one of the first things he said is, do I got to go to them 12-step meetings in order to be a recovery coach? He said, because I hate them effing things. I said, no, you don't.
It's a cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Some people love them, some people don't. So,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
So there's a sense of openness. You got to be open to whatever path somebody might be open to taking. Yeah.
And that's where harm reduction comes in, because years ago I struggled with harm reduction, being
Mhm.
again a 12-step guy and all that, right? But then once I get in and start really learning about it, and there's some parts to it I may not agree with, but if someone wants to try it, that's up to them. It's not up to me. And I need to be open to someone wanting to try their way. Because
Right.
I mean, if someone wants to do recovery my way, okay, you got to get up at 5 in the morning, you got to be at the gym, or you got to be out running, and you got to do this and that. And people look at me and say,
That's a
you're
bridge
freaking
too
crazy.
far.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's
Not
my
only that, but
recovery.
it's also connected to what you're saying earlier about responsibility, because as soon as I'm directing traffic
Yeah.
for that person, now I've taken inappropriate responsibility for their life rather
Yeah.
than them being the one that makes the choice. So I see the wisdom of it. And um but it's not easy though, because
No.
I think it's easy to kind of look at other people and say, well, here's what you should do. But that's not empowering and that's not coaching, right?
Well, I had a meeting with WCB the other day, and because I got to do this violence assessment thing we got to do for where we're working at. And so they needed me to expand on some more stuff. And she said, there's some real bad stuff that happens over there. I said, yeah, some days there is. I said, that's the nature of the business, kind of, and what we're involved in. And she said, people get affected. I said, yeah, people get burnt out, and, they get overstimulated and all the rest of it. I said, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. She said, you really got to get some training in there and get preventative. I looked at her and I love how people get to stand on the outside and point and say, here's what you should do. I said, come over and work with us for a while and tell us how to be preventative. It's pretty darn hard in harm reduction, right? You got people use and everything. It's like, you can't, like, you don't know what's going to happen from one second to the next.
Right.
So, and just what
Right.
you're saying. So people are always saying, oh no, here's what you should do. If you do this, you'll recover. Yeah. I had people tell me for a lot of years how to do it, and it didn't work. And then, yeah.
No, it's a what I like to call it as a complexicated problem. It's complex and it's complicated. So you smash those two words together and you got something that's super complexicated. This is not easy.
Yeah.
And so I really love the work that you're doing, Brian. And it also makes me curious about how can people get in touch with you? Because I know that you're training different organizations and teams and people in recovery coaching. So what's the best way for people to get in touch with you, and what kinds of programs do you have available?
Uh, well, the best way is we have a web page. So Optimal Recovery Coaching Associates. You can look it up, Orca for short. My phone number, it's on the page,
Mhm.
604-791-7992.
Yeah, we'll put those in the show notes as well. Do
Yeah.
you have any upcoming programs or trainings?
Yeah. I just finished one training with an organization down on the east end of Vancouver. We trained their staff. And now we started our next one. I believe it's September. It's right after the long weekend. I can't remember the exact date. I'll look it up right here. But so we do a lot of recovery coach training. We also have training where we can go in and consult with organizations and how
Hmm.
they can work with recovery coaches. And we
Hmm.
have one for professionals like doctors, stuff like that. Because what we say as a coach, we're not there in competition as we're not competing with doctors and counselors and therapists and that. We're there to complement them,
Hmm.
right? We're not trying to do the work. If someone needs a counselor, I'll find a counselor for them. Like I'll find a few counselors and I'll let them pick a choice. Here's three or
Right.
four different ones. Which one do you think you'd like to try? And same thing with doctors, same thing with everything. There's actually a really good one downtown, a psychiatrist downtown. When I was working down there, he would let me come in for the first few sessions with my client until my client got, I hate the story. I shouldn't be saying my client, with the person I was working with. That's a bad thing. They're not my client.
I know. I made this mistake yesterday. I was in a training for lateral kindness yesterday. It's an indigenous training, and the language that I have grown accustomed to is to talk about my clients as well. And it's no, it's partners. They're my
Yeah.
partners. We're partnering together. And so I got caught at the end of the training. I said my clients again. So I hear you, man. We'll help each other.
Yeah. Exactly. Eh? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we will we'll help professionals know how to work with a coach,
Right.
right? So we're not training them to be a coach. We're training them how to work with coaches and what coaches can actually do for them to help complement what they're doing.
Yeah. Nice.
Because
Nice.
we've trained a couple of coaches and they were labeled mental health coaches. They took our training because now they're working with doctors and the doctor's saying, here's a patient. I don't got the time to find them these resources they need. That's your job. And so the coach works with the person saying, here's some ideas, here's some places, what else is it that you think you need? So we train them in coaching and how to ask the questions and how to find the resources.
That's amazing. So if you could say something, let's say that there's somebody listening who's working in this field and they're tired and maybe they're a little bit disillusioned, and what are a couple of things you could tell them just in closing that you'd like to say to them to maybe encourage them?
So it's just, I understand what you're asking. So them as a professional on how to work with a client.
Well, let's say that
Is that
they're
what?
yes, there's professionals listening to this that are working with clients, and maybe they're a bit tired. They're on the verge of maybe feeling a little burned out, and also a little bit um sort of discouraged because the system sometimes doesn't seem to be helping at the speed that we'd like it to. So what are a couple of things you could say to them that would be encouraging?
One is the people you're working with need you. Be honest with them when you're not doing well, because that's one big thing is we don't need to put on a show for people saying, "Oh yeah, we're doing well." We got to let them know we struggle also. We're
Right.
all on the same playing field. Two is make sure you have some good supports, some good people that
Right.
understand your feelings, that are willing just to listen and not try to fix you. I hate when people try to fix me. when I just want to talk. Right. So find some people that will just listen to you. Yeah. And the biggest ones, use your mental health days. If you got insurance where you work at, take vacations, do your 2 and 3 weeks in stretch, not a day here and a day there. Take it in a stretch. You need that time for your body and for your mind and everything to relax and regenerate. Regenerate.
Regenerate. Yeah. I think you just made up a word.
I did.
That's an awesome word. Regenerate. I'm going to be regenerate. I'm going to the Haida in a couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to that holiday too. That's really good advice, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I really like the part where we get to be human beings and we're all human beings together on an equal footing. So I have a bad day, just like if I'm working with somebody who might be unhoused or struggling with addiction or mental health, to be honest like that, it just humanizes it. We're all human beings together. So I really appreciate that, man. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. And I'll make sure that we put everything in the show notes so that people can reach out and connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks, bud. Appreciate this.
Yeah, it was great to be with you.
It was fun.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to the show today, for watching it. If you watch it on YouTube, Brian McGrath's information is down below. So if you're interested in having Brian's company come and train your people, train you in recovery coaching, or consult your organization, click the links down below and reach out to Brian and connect with him. Thank you again for supporting this podcast and listening. And please share and subscribe to the show. And as you leave here and go into your work, remember to be a safe space. Thank you again for getting to the end of this podcast. And if you enjoyed this and you found that there was value in it for you, my invitation is for you to subscribe for future episodes that come out weekly on Tuesdays. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to being with you next time. Now remember to be a safe space.